Alrighty, well, hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Pitch Please, the show where we talk about movies good and bad, and we talk about what we liked and didn't like, give reasons why, and some fixes if we can, and then we'll pitch either a new version of the movie we're talking about or a sequel to that movie. I'm your host, Alex.
And I'm Troy, and we're both filmmakers, and we do a lot of film stuff together. I'm a film educator, and so it's really easy to rip on movies and criticize them, but we're here to talk about the goods and the bads of the storytelling and actually the filmmaking itself, and if there's any areas where we could offer up a fix to those problems with the story, then we would offer that up.
Yeah, this is episode 4 that we've done, so if you're new to the podcast or the show, welcome. We're happy to have you here. And if you haven't seen any of our earlier episodes, go and check those out on YouTube or Spotify. And let's get into it, into this next episode of Pitch Please. Alrighty, so the movie we're talking about today is Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. This movie was produced by Simon Emanuel, Kathleen Kennedy, and Frank Marshall. It was directed by James Mangold. The screenplay was done by Jez Butterworth, John Henry Butterworth, David Kopp, and James Mangold. The cinematography was done by Fedon Papamichael. I hope that's how I say his name. The editing was done by Andrew Buckland, Michael McCusker, and Dirk Westervelt. And the production design was done by Adam Stockhausen. It stars Harrison Ford, Mads Mikkelsen, and Phoebe Waller-Bridge. So looking for the budget, I couldn't find a specified budget on Box Office Mojo, but doing a little more digging, according to Forbes, this was a budget of around $294.7 million.
Around, so it's about $300 million.
About $300 million, and it makes it the 8th most expensive movie of all time. Yes, no.
Wow. I did not know this.
The 8th most expensive movie of all time. It's an absolutely insane budget. It was released in June 28th of 2023, and its domestic gross as of now is about $175 million, and worldwide it did about $384 million. And this is a sequel to the original trilogy, Crystal Skull, things like that.
Yeah, so if you don't know, typical numbers are, you take your budget and you double it because you have to do advertising. And so they pretty much made back their budget with about less than $100 million.
Yeah, I think they lost quite a bit.
So it sounds like they lost a chunk of money on this. Okay, here's the synopsis. In 1944, Indiana Jones and archaeologist Basil Shaw are captured by Nazis while retrieving the Lance of Longinus. Indy escapes, but Basil is taken aboard a train bound for Berlin, where Nazi scientist Jürgen Voller reveals the lance is a fake and discovers half of the Archimedes dial, a device that predicts time fissures. Years later, in 1969, Indy is retired and grieving his son's death. His goddaughter Helena seeks his help to find the other half of the dial, believing it's hidden in the French Alps. Voller, now working for NASA, wants the dial to change the outcome of World War II. The two are caught in a global chase to recover the dial, pursued by Voller and his team. Indy and Helena eventually locate the dial's second half in Sicily, but Voller kidnaps Indy and attempts to use the dial to travel back to 1939. Instead, they are transported to 2014 BC during the siege of Syracuse, where Voller's plane is shot down and he dies in the wreckage. They meet Archimedes, who reveals the dial was designed to summon future help against the Romans. Indy, feeling he has nothing to return to, decides to stay behind, but Helena saves him, and they return to the present. In the end, Indy reconciles with Marion, finding peace after a tumultuous journey.
There it is.
All right, let's get into this.
Yeah, what did you think initially of the movie overall? And we'll get into the details.
Overall, not... Oh, boy. Overall, Overall, I don't think I'd watch it again. I've seen it several times now, and I think I'm pretty solid with it. There's some really good action sequences in it and some set pieces that are fun. But in terms of a story, the story was a pretty tough one to swallow. So,
Yeah,
what about you?
I agree wholeheartedly with that. I think I've seen it more than enough now. It has a lot of fun action, but as we will get into, the story just kind of falls apart a bit, and just it wasn't as thought out as I had hoped, and it didn't live up to the Indiana Jones I remember like
Yeah, absolutely
original stuff.
And I watched this. This might give away how old I am, but I watched The Raiders of the Lost Ark when I was a kid in the movie theater. Oh man, that was quite the experience. And so this is they try to get that same vein, and there's some really good things in here, but I think that there was kind of a miss and a number of story and plot points for sure.
Yeah, no, I wholeheartedly agree, but we should talk about some of the positives first, because there were some positives.
Yeah, there were.
And again, and I didn't watch Indiana Jones in the theaters when I was a kid, because clearly wasn't around at that point, but I got to watch Indiana Jones with you a lot growing up as a kid. So I absolutely love Indiana Jones, and I had some really, really high hopes for it. And I think that the opening hook really kind of lived up to that
Absolutely.
expectation, that hope. It was one of the most interesting parts of the movie, I think. Traveling through the train, fighting Nazis, just classic Indiana Jones.
Throwing some archaeological discoveries in there, right?
Exactly. You have to with Indy. You
Yeah.
have to do the archaeology part.
Yeah, so yeah, with this opening hook lasted 22 minutes, and it was pretty epic. It was a lot of fun. I think that all of the parts worked out well. The PD was really good. You know, the production design looked really solid with all the time stuff and how they made everything look. Cinematography was really solid. Editing moved along at a nice clip in there. Everything worked out well. And
Even
so
CGI his face to look younger.
I bought it.
I did too. Like it threw me for a loop just because I knew like that's what he looks like when he was younger, but it didn't look off. Like it was really well done CGI.
Yeah.
And it really kind of added again to that whole it's in the past. Mm-hmm.
I like the part where the gun turret was firing, and then they took out the guy in the gun turret, and then the turret was broken and was spinning and shooting. I don't know how one locks the trigger down, but that was a really great Indiana Jones moment where the gun is firing and shooting up the train. In order, like, and they added a nice time element to it, some tension to it, and it also liquidated a whole bunch of Nazis that otherwise would have just killed Baz and Indy.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely. Like they had an issue, and then it was a problem that got solved pretty easily for him. But again, it's classic Indy, so
Yeah.
you gotta let it slide because it's fun to watch Nazis die.
Yeah, it is. It is. Absolutely. And I think that when they get on the roof of or not the roof. Yeah, it would be the roof of the train.
Yeah,
That was a lot of fun. And then going through the tunnel and Voller, who is named Schmidt later, but he pushes them up against.
no, that was a different guy.
Oh, it was a different
Yeah,
guy.
it was like a Nazi general that was.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and they're fighting.
And he was big.
He was a big guy.
It was just a fun when Indy fights a big guy.
Yeah,
And he
underdog.
pushes him up against the rocky ceiling of the
tunnel.
The tunnel was a lot of fun.
I just love when like they both duck down because they go into the tunnel, and then the Nazi who's got a knife in his hand starts crawling towards him. And it's like I never would have thought to do that. Of like, okay, I'm just gonna crawl to you under this tunnel. Like, we've only got inches to spare, but I got a knife, so I'm gonna try to, stab you and slice you. And like, it adds an extra layer to the fight, which was just a ton of fun.
Yeah, it was. It was a lot of fun. And then that's the hook. So that did work into the story quite often. The Indiana Jones hooks are somewhat separate from the whole rest of the movie.
Yeah.
And this hook actually played into the storyline.
Yeah.
So I think maybe they did that and got away with a little bit longer hook, possibly. But I think it was the real highlight of the movie itself, for sure.
It definitely was a tone setter for sure. Mm-hmm. I just sadly feel like they didn't keep up with the tone.
Yeah. So the one problem we had was tell them about the one problem on the train on the top of the.
Oh, yeah. So one of the biggest issues for me was when Voller does have a gun on Indy and Baz, and he asks for the dial, and Indy tosses him. I think it was the empty case that the dial came in, and like double crosses him and stuff like that. Voller is holding onto a train that's going probably 50 or 60 miles an hour, and he just gets nailed in the face by
One of those train catches.
a train catcher,
That's a
something like
bag catch.
something like that, and just gets absolutely demolished by this thing traveling super duper fast, and he's totally fine.
Later.
Later in the movie, like he's totally fine. Like that to me was really, really confusing and bad because when we see him again later, his face isn't horribly disfigured, which he would have been.
That would have been cool.
He's alive.
For
It's just like that's the biggest issue. But like he didn't have some nasty scar on his face or something that would have maybe changed his appearance a little bit. Like he just looked the exact same as he did when we first saw him. And to me, that was such a missed opportunity. And again, it was like you basically murdered your main villain here from the start, but then decided, oh wait, we needed him, so he's totally fine. It's like he should have gone on the train top with Indy. Maybe loses the gun or something, and Indy punches him off, and he falls into like a bunch of trees or like hits the side of the mountain, gets a bunch of gets his face kind of mangled, but manages to survive because maybe he landed on something soft. In the process. And then later when he and Indy come face to face, his face looks different, so Indy doesn't recognize him. Like, to me, that would have been an easy fix rather than completely smashing him over the head with a metal pipe.
Right.
And not showing it.
Yeah, and it would have added to the story having this guy disfigured, and then Indy wouldn't recognize him.
Right.
So
yeah, and
that would have been a good way to do it.
Yeah, he was a Nazi too, and like so many Nazis back in the day, like were disfigured and had these crazy scars. It's like just add on a giant scar to the Nazi that would have made him look even more intimidating. And would have done a lot more for that character.
Yeah. So they decided to go the route of Indy is an old grouchy man who's now boring. Yep. He's grouchy. He's retiring. He's yelling at his neighbors. He's disconnected from society. He's disconnected from his students. And it's just tough to watch a hero character be that guy.
Yeah.
And it was disheartening to see Indiana Jones be that guy because, yes, it's the antithesis of what he's always been. But I feel like they could have gone a different way with that, which we'll talk about later.
Yeah, and thinking about it now, it's like they could have gone the route of he became a cynical old man because, he loses like everything that's important in his life, and now he's kind of like beaten down. But I'm with you. Like it's a tough character to get behind, especially when he's been established before.
Yes,
charming, adventurous, and sure of himself, and still interesting.
Yeah,
like not grumpy, but actually enjoys what he does.
Yeah.
That was a tough one.
Right. We get to the point where he runs into Helena Shore, his friend's daughter. His goddaughter.
Yeah.
And they try to establish this relationship, and it just felt not great with the way they approached it. They having this, like, they're supposed to really know each other well, but it turns out they haven't seen each other really for 24 years.
Something like 18 years.
I did the little time math. I think it was about, like a long time, at least a couple decades.
Yeah.
So it's like, hey, I'm back in your life all of a sudden. And you don't, after 20 years, and she was a young girl, like, you don't really know her.
Right.
But she describes the objective of they want to go after this dial, right?
Right.
And her objective is, well, actually, I'm moving ahead. So she wants the dial.
Yes.
She lies to him. It's her goddaughter. It's his goddaughter, who he hasn't seen in a few decades. She lies to him, and then he ends up showing her the dial out of trust. And then she just sabotages him. She just uses him. She's a user.
She steals it. She steals it straight up.
And for some, some great purpose. So she steals it for a great purpose. And what was the purpose?
To sell it for money to pay back her debts.
To pay back her gambling debts. Wow, that's such a moving objective.
Oh yeah, that was a tough one for me.
Yeah.
I just
Cheap.
It is cheap and stuff, and that was her whole character.
Yeah.
And that's the character that they played up through this whole movie. And for me, I really didn't like Helena's character
No, me neither.
at all. Like she wasn't likable.
Nope.
She felt very smug. She never takes Indy seriously. She was always making fun of him for being old. And like every time he tried to tell her something or, show her something, because he's done it before. He's Indiana Jones. He's experienced. He knows what he's doing. She just act all contempt. Like,
Yeah.
like, okay, old man, like, say what you want, but I'm just going to do it my way anyways. And like, you speak whatever it is. And then her way always seemed to work out.
Right. She was a bit of a narcissist for sure because she was trying to be charming, which I never thought she was charming, cavalier, and she just really did everything for herself. And what was sad was that Indy didn't really move past that. He still liked her and stayed with her and didn't see her as an enemy. And she really was. She wasn't just like two buddies bickering. This is making the story more interesting. She was literally an antagonist that they decided to partner together, and it was a little frustrating for sure.
It was tough too because, so like a little further on in the movie, we get to a point where, Indy's saying, hey, if you find this Graphagos thing, these charts to tell you where the dial is, like you'll need me to read it because there's like a couple different codes it could be in, and I know how to read those codes. Well, she immediately comes back with, well, I've been learning how to read at least one code, straight, like, since I was a little kid and stuff like that. And so they had the opportunity to give them a reason to stay together for the movie. Like, I need you, you need me, we can help each other,
Yes.
kind of thing. And they took that moment and they said, nope, we're just going to say that she can do all the things that Indy can do too. And basically turns the only reason she stays with him and comes along with him is to get access to this boat that he has to go diving. But she could have easily
Just hired.
hired someone to take her out diving for this boat. And so for me, it's like they had no business being together at all
No.
through the whole film, other than the fact that they're loosely connected as goddaughter and godfather.
Yeah, absolutely. And it really made Indy's character look even weaker and more frail because he said, you need me to read this Graphicos. And she's like, I don't need you. I can read it in my sleep. Right. Well, you need me for the boat because I know a guy. Well, okay. Well, that's so bad.
Yeah, so
Like, make her not know the code. That's how you fix that problem. She can't read the code.
exactly.
Or she can read part of the code, but not all the code.
She's been trying to learn it, but maybe she's not through her, studying code yet.
code
So,
learning yet.
hey,
Yeah.
here's the guy who knows or could at least show her along the way, like have that teachable moment, things like that. To me, Helena and her sidekick Teddy are like two characters to me that are the issue with modern day Hollywood characters.
Yeah.
They have this thing that they do where they have the old veteran, who gets paired up with like the young hotshot.
Yeah.
And the young hotshot doesn't want to listen to the old veteran. The old veteran tries to tell him to do it one way. The hotshot does it their own way. And the hotshot ends up being right.
Yeah, it's terrible.
And then the hotshot has all the necessary skills they need for that entire story. They're not lacking of anything. Their weaknesses, if they have any, are like completely unnecessary.
Yeah.
And so what a lot of modern Hollywood movies do is they try to create these superhero characters that don't need to learn anything, don't need to grow in any way, don't need help from anyone. And they're boring, stale characters.
They're lame. They're completely lame.
Like, you need your character to have weaknesses. That's what makes it interesting.
Yeah.
When things go right, it's just boring. It's like people remember what goes wrong. And that's the whole idea behind conflict. It's like you have a character. Okay, I can't read these codes. Okay, well, I can read these codes. But maybe we're at odds right now. I guess we can put that aside because we need each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can't even tell you why, now that I think about it, why did Indy even want the second half of the dial? Because he did nothing with the first half, with the one half of the
Stop the
night.
Nazis.
Is that what it was?
It was just stop the Nazis.
Stop the Nazis. Okay,
We gotta stop the Nazis.
That's a fair objective.
We always need to stop the Nazis.
Indy's got two main objectives in life. One is to find and protect archaeological finds,
Yeah,
is put it in a museum.
Yep.
And the other one is to stop the Nazis.
There you go.
So I buy it. I will settle with.
Let's say they hit both of those with this one. You know,
They did.
Gotta find the piece of history and stop the Nazis.
But really, they should have tied him into being a necessary component and not a old man tagging along. Yeah, because that was just unnecessary. And they could have. It was an easy fix.
100%, because the way it was set up, well, the way it is set up right now is that the only reason Indy's in the movie is because his name's on the title. Mm-hmm. And to me, it kind of felt like they're trying to set up like, we're gonna rob this old guy of his stuff, and now it's about Helena trying to, you know, get this thing before the Nazis do. But it's like, oh well, we're still trying to make an Indiana Jones film, so he's got to be there at some point. So let's just make him tag along and try to find her along the way. He had no business being there. He didn't even want to be there.
Right, and they could have fixed that. They could have made it a much more. They could have made him a more necessary character for sure. Now, and then Sala shows up, and we love Sala.
Oh yeah,
Sala is great, and it was good to see him. But boy, oh boy, he looked like he was in pain. John Rhys Davies.
yeah.
He looked like he was in pain. And
sad.
and so I like, you know, I'm not a big guy I'm really not a fan service kind of guy. I don't need fan service.
Yeah.
I don't need them to throw in old characters for nostalgia's sake. I think that is I think that's a Hollywood money grab thing more than it is a story thing. No, I'm not saying that there isn't some good callbacks before, but I like to see Sala.
Yeah.
He looked miserable, and there was a part where he said he wanted to go. He's like, I want to go with you. I want to do adventures again. I want to feel the sand. I miss the desert. I miss the adventures.
Yeah.
And then Indy robs him of it and says, no, you can't go. Like, seriously? You can't go? Now, I get it. Maybe John Rhys Davies is making this, you know, he couldn't do it, like, physically as an actor.
Yeah.
So I get it. I get that whole idea of him asking to go and Indy saying no, because as far as the actor goes, you can't have him do that stuff.
Right.
But as in terms of storytelling, it was a bad move because they robbed Sala of his dream.
Yeah, his adventure.
They could have killed him off. They could have brought him along. He could have done a sacrificial thing. He could have done something about 10, 15 minutes into Sala being with them, and then they could have had this moment where Sala dies, and they could have been a motivating force to move forward towards whatever, with the dial or whatever. But it could have been a really beautiful thing, like a real bittersweet thing where Sala does something to, like I said, sacrifices himself, helps Indy get something now, and he's more motivated to move towards the objective that he has. And it would have been like a good ending for Sala, and a sad one, but a good one. So,
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't like. I like what you're going, and I like what you're doing with that. And maybe instead of killing off Sala, because we love Sala and Sala's great, it could have been something where he's just not in a position to go with him. Like maybe he's driving the car, and maybe instead of dropping him off at the airport, maybe they're trying to get onto the plane that Helena's on, and maybe it's taken off. So maybe Sala breaks onto the tarmac in the car and drives after it, and Indy decides to jump onto the plane, you know, and it's like,
and just helps him get away, and that dies.
right, and he helps.
All right, I'll give you that.
He helps him get away, and it's like, okay, well, Sala can't ditch the car that he's driving,
Right.
and try to jump on too. It's just like, you know, Sala helps him get to the end again. It's like he always does in the adventures.
That would be better.
Until he gets Indy onto the wheels of the plane or something, and he's like, give him hell, Indiana Jones, like he says in that, and drives away, and that was the end of Sala's little cameo.
That would have been good too, and that wouldn't have been so sad. So yeah, I recanted what I said earlier. I think that would have been really solid, because then for the actor, he could have done something sitting. He could have been in a car.
Yeah.
And he, like you said, and then he would have added to the story and not been like, hey, Indy, I wish I could go with you. You can't go. Oh, okay. So yeah,
Right.
missed moment.
And then it adds
Missed opportunity.
and adds an extra, action piece that could have happened in
Yeah.
the movie too,
Fun,
which was totally fun.
because that would have been fun.
Oh yeah, like
Excellent.
Okay, so another thing that we we both didn't really like or get was this whole part with the CIA. So
What is that?
when we're first introduced to Voller in modern day times on Moon Day, we're told that he helped put men on the moon, like he helped design the rocket that went there. So we know he's a smart guy and stuff like that.
His name is Schmidt at this point.
Yeah, goes by Schmidt, and like he's being escorted around. We find out later by the CIA, because they're watching over him. They're gonna take him to get a medal from the president and then go off. But then
They know he's a Nazi. If they're CIA, they would know he's a Nazi.
yes, 100%. They know he's a Nazi. They're going around with him, and then for some reason he has them running operations for him.
Yeah.
Is what I was led to believe by that. And like they show up to, because they're tracking Helena, I think, because they're trying to find. They're trying to find the dial. They go to Indy's place. A couple of these people are CIA agents, and then a couple of them aren't.
It's
And
very
we're not sure if they're agents in training or whatever. And then the agents in training murder people
straight up.
straight up. But then the actual agent doesn't seem too phased by it. She gets like
He seems annoyed and upset that things aren't going well.
like, what are you doing? And then like, oh, well, you just killed 2 people. And she's like, okay, well, don't do that. And then they just go about their day. Like, what happened? Why? That was so dumb.
It was really dumb. It was so unnecessary. Why would you have the CIA? It was this very convoluted thing of the guy getting a medal and then the CIA tagging him. First off, CIA wouldn't be doing that.
Right.
As far as I understand CIA.
They wouldn't be killing American citizens.
They wouldn't be
either
killing American citizens.
for a Nazi.
Yeah, it was just dumb. And then it ended up really, the whole idea of the CIA just ended up going out the window. They just kind of took it to a point, and then it just sort of stopped.
Because he
And now
kills
they're-
him off.
Yeah, they kill her off, and then now it's just these bad guys.
Yeah.
So
The simplest fix they could have done is literally just Schmidt. He could have even been a rocket scientist, and he has no escort. He's just got a bunch of goons, probably from old Nazi town.
yeah,
And he's like, hey, we're going to do this and go kill these people and get back my dial for me. And just make them straight up goons and like completely forget the CIA involvement whatsoever.
yeah, and the fact that the moon, like, who cares that he built a rocket? Who cares that he's in the United States for a medal from the president?
Right.
Just make him a Nazi
With goons.
with goons coming to get the dial. Don't overwork it.
Right, because it just added a whole convoluted level to the story that amounted to nothing.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing. So, yeah, we both agreed that was
Yeah.
just a really odd choice, to say the least.
Right. And so Helena actually explains, at one point, her whole personality. She does a card trick, and then she explains the card trick to someone, and she literally tells them the card trick is you find a mark, you make them feel like they have a choice, but then you force the card, or maybe basically saying you make them do what you want. And which shows how just unbelievably shallow she is, and how, why would we want her to be with Indiana Jones? Why would we want them to be partnered up? She's a narcissist, selfish, unlikable narcissist who is just looking to use people, her godfather, for her own,
For money,
to pay off her debt, her gambling debt. So
which we know she will just get very quickly after paying it off.
yeah, so a fix to that would be just make her more endearing, make a better backstory, make her have some depth in terms of a more compelling story.
Yeah.
Like, not make her some narcissist who looks for marks and uses them, but someone who has a passion. Like, don't have her have debts for gambling. Have maybe it's something like medical expenses for her family, or something that has more heart to it, that would create more desperation. Like, I need this money for this, better reason than to say to pay off gambling debts, because that's what a bad guy does. they have to pay off their gambling debts, or that's what an anti-protagonist, like a you could have a protagonist with that same issue, but don't make
Right.
your buddy in a buddy movie that person, a user of people.
Well, it could have even been something as simple as because they talk about how like she memorized her father's journals and stuff like that. Maybe he went crazy because they said he kind of went crazy looking into this dial thing. What if kind of doing like a national treasure thing? What if that kind of made him the laughing stock of the of the scientific community or the archaeological community? And then he died, kind of this disgrace. And so maybe now she's trying to find this dial to kind of, save her father's legacy and save her father's name. And she's going to the one person who her father was friends with, her godfather.
That would be so much more compelling.
Yeah.
I want to restore the family name, and you have half the dial. Let's go find the other half the dial. That makes way more sense. Now she's a likable character. Now she has a positive objective, like a benevolent objective, so to speak, and it would be more compelling. I would root for her
Absolutely.
if that was her objective.
And then again, make sure she has weaknesses.
And then she's got to have weaknesses
Like she needs
that works against that.
Yeah, she needs Indy to come along with her because she doesn't have it all together. She doesn't, she knows like some of her father's books, and maybe she can't read some of it. And she knows that Indy's like really into this stuff. And it's like, okay, I need you to come along to help me save my father's legacy. You're a good friend and the guy who made you my godfather.
Right. Give her parts of the puzzle, some puzzle pieces, but not all of them.
Right. And then that makes Indy coming along much more satisfying and meaningful too. It's like, okay, I want to help my goddaughter who I haven't seen in years.
Build that relationship.
And, help reestablish her father, my good friend, and kind of save his legacy.
Yes.
That gives him the reason to go now.
Yeah.
It would have made it, again, so much more compelling and so much better. And also, don't give her sidekick Teddy.
Oh my gosh. Sidekicks don't need sidekicks.
No, Teddy was, again, another just
unnecessary distraction
character who's a character trope that has, again, become so popular in Hollywood. This young kid who, for some reason, knows more than all these adults.
I didn't quite get that from him.
Well, they talk.
I just got that. I just never liked him.
So, like in the Tuk Tuk chase in Tangiers, which is a fun chase.
Okay, true. Very fun chase scene.
They're saying he's a fun chase scene. Then they're like, listen to Teddy. He knows these streets better than you do. And he's like, go left. And then he's like, no, go right. And I'm like, what are you doing? And stuff like that. It's like they're saying this kid seems to know. And then he like figures out how to fly a plane from junk. It's like. And again,
that was a groan.
He talks to Indy with the same kind of contempt and just smugness that Helena has. And so I just don't like him. And to me, it makes it feel like he's trying to be this know-it-all and seems to be this know-it-all, even though he's a kid and he's not actually that smart.
Yeah, well, and he just doesn't have any positive reasons either. He's a thief. He stole Indy's watch, I think, or wallet.
Yeah.
He stole something from...
Watch.
There's nothing positive about him. There's no redeeming qualities. He's not the street rat with a heart of gold from Aladdin, per se.
Right. He's just a street rat who found his meal ticket with Helena because they both are just in it for the money.
Okay. I will say, functionally speaking, the idea that he's practicing on how to fly a plane by working on junk is like on the right track for ideas of payoffs, right? Like somebody, practices on something and then they get to do it on the real thing.
Yeah.
But a plane is so complicated. Like if it was a car, okay. But a plane flying through space and time? Just so I felt like for the writing, yeah, I get what they're going for. Yeah, I get it. Hey, we gotta have somebody fly a plane. Let's make it this Teddy kid, and he doesn't know how to fly a plane. So how are we gonna make it fly a plane? Well, we're just gonna put together junk, and he's gonna pretend like he knows. He's gonna know how to fly it. That will lead us into the next thing. I get the heart behind it. I just don't think it worked.
No, it didn't, and it could have easily been Helena.
I mean, clearly, you don't need Teddy, and that could have been her strength. So, like she can't read the Graphica, right?
Yeah.
The Graphicos, she can't read it. Indy can. Indy can fly a plane, though.
Can he?
Yeah. He can't land one, but he can fly one. Remember?
Kind of. Oh, that's right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so she could have been a pilot or something else. But Teddy was an unnecessary character. He was quite the liability, actually.
Yeah, he just created more issues than he did.
We thought it was fun. I thought it was fun when Indy's talking about being old, and this was a real nice thing for quite often in Hollywood movies, which is also a trope that is super played out of the old guy saying how old they are. We saw that in Lethal Weapon movies, where I'm getting too old for this and stuff like that, and it was funny back then.
Oh, yeah.
And that was but now it's like, let's just prove to everyone how old they are, and we're gonna beat the audience over the head with how old they are. And so they had an opportunity here with Indy for that, and which they pivoted in a good way, where he was talking to, when they were down in the cave, the Dionysus cave.
Yeah.
He's talking about how old he was and how he couldn't move as fast, but then it was props to him. He can't do it because he's been shot 9 times. He's been poisoned. He's been drank the blood of Kali. So like, let him. And I'm like, okay, that's how you do it. That was good storytelling. It's like, let's not make Indy look old just for old sake, but let's look at him as if he's got a lot more miles on him because he's done some really cool stuff.
He's not just old, he's also experienced.
He's extremely experienced. So props to them for doing that as well.
Yeah, that was a really fun bit. I like that one a lot too.
But where it got weak was in the Archimedes cave thing. They had a water displacement moment, and I just was like, oh, like, let's throw some bricks in the water to displace the water, which will open up a door to a cavern. I'm like, well, how would they get the water back up there? How they? Because you got to understand, if somebody makes these things in the real world, we got to unmake them. Right. And so that was,
especially with ancient technology, like, how are you going to reset that?
Yeah. Right.
Stone platform that somehow moves mechanically.
And that's that to me, that's a Wikipedia moment. Like, well, let's look up Archimedes and okay, like water displacement. Oh, I got an idea. Let's take a scene where they have to displace some water to move forward. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Maybe a little better than
code for it. And I think you were talking about too how why was Archimedes' tomb just in the middle of a cave?
Like deep
in the middle of a cave. Like, you had to climb up a cliffside, crawl through, a bunch of stuff, and
bugs, and
there's this hand chiseled, tomb sarcophagus in the middle of an open room in a cave.
And one of the most famous people in history.
And no one decided to go searching through that cave beforehand. Right? Like, it seemed they got access pretty easily, and like plenty of people seem to go through it. Like, why would no one explore the cave a little bit more and be like, hey, what's this? Archimedes? Ooh, that's cool.
Wow, there's propellers on the front of this bird. Yeah, that was a little tough for sure.
Strange for sure.
They had the and then Voller. So Indy has the piece of Indy's standing there with the piece to the dial, and Voller is standing right next to him and points the gun at Helena and says, if you don't give me this piece, I'm gonna shoot her. And then he literally just turns and he goes and hands it to him. I'm like, that was so unnecessary. You just aim it at Indy, or just shoot him. Like, have it,
or just grab it from him.
I mean,
you got a gun on him, just take it from his hand. He doesn't have to give it to him.
Story-wise, it was very forced. Like, why are we aiming over here when this guy's here? You just aim at him. They could have come up with a more clever way to force him to give over the dial. I don't know what that would be off the top of my head, but it could have played out a lot. Like, he died. Like, Indy could have hit it or something, and then it could have been a whole thing.
It could have been something like, Raiders opening, where he gets to the giant chasm, and it's like, throw me the idol, I'll throw you the whip. It could have been something like that, where like they're like it's booby trapped or something, like this tomb, so that someone can't just hold on to this, have this dial, like make it a little difficult. And now the Nazis are on one side of the cavern and he's on the other. It's like, all right, we'll help you across if you toss us that first. And so like, okay, well, I know how this is gonna play out, but I really have no choice. Toss it over. Yep, goodbye. And now we gotta get out somehow.
That would have been good. I think the booby traps, we missed the booby traps in this movie. There was
It was all too easy to get to.
it was really easy, and we love the booby traps. That's the whole point.
That's classic Indiana
It's
Jones.
treasure hunting. You have to have the booby traps.
You have to have the booby traps.
And they didn't have it. But one thing that was crazy though was Teddy was being chased by the big goon, the just massive man, and they go into the water.
Oh my.
And they go to a grate. Of course, they're in the dark cave and the water's lit. And I get it. Filmmaking is fun.
Yeah.
But it comes to a grate. Teddy slips through the grate under the water. They're like underwater.
Yep.
Come to a grate in the tube.
The massive current
But
pushed
the
them into
massive
this
current,
bay.
the kid slips through and then turns around and handcuffs the goon to the grate, killing him, murdering him.
Straight up.
When he could have just swam away, knowing that the guy is not going to get out of there because the current's pushing him and he's pushed up against his grate.
The hole is not small or is too small for him. Yeah.
But they take the Teddy characters, they just make him a murderer. Like, I'm gonna make sure you're not getting out of here. I'm gonna handcuff you. Like, oh, like
Insult to injury.
just
And
intense.
again, taking this semi-innocent kid and making him a full-blown murderer. It's like,
Yeah,
just in a heartbeat by one act. Like, that was intense.
right?
That was just, wow.
Yeah,
A little overkill, I'm not gonna lie.
it was.
Granted, he was a Nazi, but still, a little overkill. Oh,
Yeah.
man. And so then they do their time travel thing. And to me, that was okay. I'm like, okay, we want to do a time travel movie, we can do a time travel movie. It's
Yeah.
not, it's overplayed for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the last one we just did, Deadpool and Wolverine
Yeah.
was a time travel movie.
Yeah, no, and that has become more and more of a thing with how Hollywood movies is doing time travel. They're using it kind of as like a story crutch to make things more interesting.
Yeah.
All it does,
Solve problems.
all it does is complicate things.
Super ad, yeah.
Back to the Future did it right.
Yes.
Back to the Future did it perfectly
And why is that?
because the time travel was the problem, not the solution.
Yes.
Time travel was what caused the issues. They had to fix everything and then go back and try to make sure they didn't screw up time anymore. And these modern day movies, they use time travel as like everything's screwed up, so let's go back in time to fix it.
To fix it.
And then we're all good.
Yeah.
And so,
Missed opportunity.
yes,
Or unnecessary.
unnecessary and
Right.
and missed.
Yeah.
And so for me, I wasn't too upset about doing the time travel. I kind of called it honestly in the trailer that they were gonna travel at the time. It was like Dial of Destiny and like
I mean, yeah.
the way they set up, I was like, okay, there's probably gonna be some time element. The way I thought they were gonna do it was different than what they actually did. What I thought they were gonna do is they were gonna take old Indiana Jones and they're gonna have him go back in time. He goes back to like Nazi land Germany, you know, they're got the Germans and stuff like that. And then he comes face to face with his younger self and with somebody else playing the character of younger Indy, thereby being able to pass the torch from Harrison Ford to some new actor to play Indiana Jones. And now you can restart the franchise with a new character, do different adventures. He's young again, something like that.
Problem solved. Hollywood is happy.
Like, yeah, you got your remakes of Indiana Jones with a new character, and you give a good handoff from the original guy. You know, you let him have his final moment. You know, and send him off in a good way. What they actually did was, you know, they sent him way far back in time to 214 BC, I think they said.
Yeah, I wrote it down.
I believe that's where it was
Yeah.
to see freaking Rome attacking Archimedes' place like that.
And of course, it's never just an ordinary day.
Right.
It's the Battle of Syracuse.
Yeah, they showed up on that exact day in the middle of the battle.
Which is fine. I mean, you gotta have to do that when you're telling a story.
Yeah, so like
Yeah.
I thought that was fun, and it added a little fun elements of like, okay, they did travel back in time, they traveled far too back in time, and then that got Indy onto the ground in this time period that he spent his whole life reading, and this to me is where they had kind of their biggest letdown and biggest issues was the ending, and I know you had similar issue with the ending as well.
Sure. Well, first off, let's first talk about the time travel element. So Voller gets the pieces of the dial and then he puts them together as if he knows how to do it.
Oh yeah.
No struggle there, sir.
Yep.
And then he dials it because he knows how to dial it somehow. And then it says it gives latitude and longitude. Like I don't think latitude and longitude existed back in Archimedes' day.
I don't.
And then and then the time and the location, and it's all this stuff that we're just supposed to suspension of disbelief.
Yeah.
That we got to move the story along. So he's got this dial from the 300 BC time period
Yeah.
that he knows how to put together, how to use it, how to get exactly where he wants to go and at what time, which makes me think of Back to the Future. Like he had a readout, 1985 or
Type in the date.
type in the date, boom, hit the button and go. This is a dial from ancient times, and so that was a tough one to swallow. That was really tough for me, but because they could have solved that in a few different ways, but simpler the better.
So yeah, how would you fix that?
I don't see. Maybe it has a map on the dial. Maybe he couldn't go back to Germany. Maybe they knew that they were going to fly into. Maybe it was just like a map of the Mediterranean area, and they knew that they're going to fly out of northern Italy area, like the Alps, and then just cross over into Germany. Like they didn't have to show up right in Germany. They could have. It could have been this whole plan of like, well, let's get, or they could even just showed up in Syracuse
So actually, so I guess I should explain.
or Sicily. I mean,
I did get this part was I think the latitude and longitude, of what the dial showed was where the time fissure was gonna happen.
right? But how do you?
So that's different. So it's like they knew like there's gonna be a displacement in time in this area. That's what the dial showed them. He thought it'd be at a certain time, and then knew they'd have to fly from wherever they ended up to Germany. They just need to know where in time and like where in space this time fissure was going to happen because it doesn't apparently happen in the same place all the time. So I think it was supposed to find where this ripple in time is.
Yeah. Either way,
Still convoluted.
very convoluted. This is a tough
Really
one.
convoluted.
But but that's not the sad part. Okay, suspension of disbelief. Sure, I'll buy. They can show up where they want. Sure, I can do that. But the ending is so upsetting to me
Me too.
because Indy is ecstatic. He is at the Battle of Syracuse. He meets Archimedes. What a dream for an educator, an archaeologist.
Yep.
A historian to meet Archimedes, right? And he's finally this whole movie he's had no purpose. Like he's got nothing at home. He's retired, which means he's probably gonna die within 6 months because that's kind of
He's divorced.
He'll have no objective to live.
Yeah.
He's divorced. He's lost his son. He's got no job. He's boring. He hates his neighbors. He finally goes to a place where he literally says, "I can help out Archimedes," and Archimedes seems interested.
Yeah.
And he's like, I want to stay here. And I thought, wow, this is going to be great.
Yeah, great send off.
And then this selfish narcissistic character tells him he's not a hero. Helena, you're not a hero. And it would have been such a great ending for Harrison Ford's character to stay with Archimedes. That was what he wanted. But what ended up happening is that she steals it from him.
Yep.
She steals his dream from him like she steals everything else. She knocks him out, drags him back home to a home he doesn't want to go to, in a time he doesn't want to be in, destroys, you'll never get this opportunity again. Like no human on the planet will get this opportunity to go meet Archimedes and live that time period.
Right.
She steals it from him, takes it back home. And then for fan service, they bring back Marion
Yeah.
and do the whole kiss thing. And so I don't need Indy to be reconciled to Marion. It doesn't matter to me. I don't need that fan service.
Yeah.
I need Indy to end Indy's career on a high note.
Yeah.
And it is not living, and you said it, the family life. What'd you say?
Yeah, I mean, they already did that. So like the whole thing in Crystal Skull was he was married to Marion, he had a kid, and then they did that whole movie, and then in this one it's established from the get-go, okay, like he's divorced from Marion, we find out his son died. It's like they already did the family thing, and then we found out it didn't work. Okay, move on from that. Like, don't try to rehash what you already tried, because again, I have nothing against Marion.
Right.
It's just,
I love Marion.
yeah, she's great, and she was great for when she was there, but like he doesn't really need her then. He needs a new adventure, and that's what staying in Archimedes' time would have been. It was going to be his last great adventure, living with the people he had studied and spent his whole life dedicated to learning about.
And can talk to. He can talk to him.
Right, yeah, he can speak the language. Like, that's not an issue for him. Like, he could stay there, he could help out. It's like, they already traveled back in time in a plane that's crashed on the side of the thing. It's like, to say that, one guy staying would change history. It's like, they already brought a plane back from history, and that's already been etched in.
Yeah.
Odds are it's not going to really change much of anything else. And then they bring him back to Marion and steal him of his last great adventure. With the thing that he finally lit up for and looked actually like the whole movie, he just looks tired and dead inside
Miserable.
and uninterested in everything that's happening. And then he gets back in there and he's just like, this is incredible. And like, you see this spark of life in his eyes.
He lights up.
It's his, it truly is. I keep saying this over and over again, but it's like, it's his last great adventure. It's like the way he wants to go out, the thing that he can see himself staying in it and experiencing, and it gets taken from him to go back to Marion, who, by the way,
She wasn't waiting for him.
she wasn't.
He wasn't waiting for her.
They separated.
They were
They
done.
never reconcile. They don't talk through the whole movie, and then she comes back in and is like, "I hear you're back. Are you back?" He's like, "I'm back." I'm like, "No, that alive version of Indy stayed back in 214 BC. Like, he's gone back to grumpy old man Indiana Jones because he was once again robbed of the thing he wanted." And it's like, they just seem to be okay without ever talking about it, without ever truly reconciling it. It wasn't the ending I wanted for Indy.
No, it was again along the lines of stealing, of like telling old people you can't do this, which bothers me so much. Like, you can't do this. You're old. You can't make good choices. You don't know what you want. Sala, you can't come with me. I want to go with you. You can't come with me. No, change the story. Give him a great send off. Give Sala a great moment of like helping out India one last time and then going back to his family, which is great. Indy's like, I want to stay. All the chips fall into place. Everything falls into place for him to stay in that timeline with Archimedes. Everything works out. And then Helena drags him back. And are we really supposed to believe that it's because she loves him and their relationship is so powerful, and the relationship with his ex-wife, who he doesn't see anymore, is so powerful that he's going to be relieved when he gets back?
Yeah.
I just call BS, and I don't think it was not a good story choice at all. No. Disappointing.
It upset me a lot.
And and I would have thought that this movie, which has a lot of flaws in it, I would have actually probably really liked it more, just by even the things I have issue with, even more if he would have just gotten his last adventure. And then credits roll, forget Helena, forget everything else. He rides off in the sunset with Archimedes.
Who would that be?
That would be awesome. And then roll credits, Indy's done. And we're like, yeah, right on, brother.
I agree wholeheartedly. It would have made all the missteps in the beginning like totally fine in the end, because like you said, it would have been his great ride off into the sunset. Yeah. So overall, what would you give this movie overall? How would you like it?
If I would rate it on a 5 scale, 10, I'd say on a scale of
1 to 10.
Scale of 1 to 10, 1 to 5 is tough. 1 to 10, I would give it a 3.5. Well, I'd give it a 4. 3.5.
Yeah.
I'll stick with a 3.5, maybe a 4, just because it's Harrison Ford and that opening hook was pretty solid. I'd probably give it I'm sticking with 3.5.
And a half. I'd probably give it a 4.
Yeah.
Just because of the opening hook, and I mean, again, there was a lot of fun car chases. There was a lot of fun action.
Yeah. But
there was so many story plots and story holes. Like, so when I I interned at the Kennedy Marshall Company.
Yeah.
And when I was there, they were working on this movie. I think they were in the script phase because I went there in 22. And no, they might have actually finished up filming or something like that, or been in the process of filming. I sadly did not get to like be part of that in any way as an intern. I really, really wish I would have been able to be a part of it because I would have loved to give notes like this on that and try to make, you know, a character that I love have a better send off and have a better story overall. So yeah.
So that's our notes on the goods and the bads, the positives and the constructives for Dial of Destiny.
Yeah. Cool.
So Alice, why don't you do our pitch, please?
Very well. All right, so we're doing a re pitch of this movie the way we would have done it, because we don't want to do a sequel. We want to redo this one. So it starts off with kind of the same opening hook as this Dial of Destiny, fighting the Nazis on the train. He's looking for some artifacts that the Nazis stole, but they don't have it. But he does find this dial instead. We meet Dr. Voller, who tries to stop him and get this dial because he knows what it is as well. But Indy ends up throwing him off the train, and Dr. Voller kind of lands in some trees, gets a couple like large cuts on his face.
Right.
Indy doesn't see, just Indy thinks he's dead, tossed off the train. So we jump forward again to 1969. Indy's a professor of archaeology, but I thought it'd be fun if he also was the curator of a museum. Since he's got all these artifacts, he maybe took it over from Marcus,
Right.
as kind of a nod to him, you know, respect to him. And so in his free time, he curates this museum. And he likes to talk a lot about his glory days. You know, he's retired from searching for artifacts and missing treasure and stuff like that. But
So wait a minute, you're saying that instead of a grouchy old man, he'd be a guy who revels in the adventures that he had and an interesting guy.
100%.
All right, I think that's a way better approach.
I mean, I think, yeah, it's a more endearing character. And again, he did all this cool stuff, and he's at that point in his life where he's like, I want to tell people about this, you know? And so
Right on.
I think he tries to tell his students in class and anyone who comes into the museum, you know, about his adventures and the artifacts that he finds. But I don't think many people really believe him because they just sound too far-fetched. You know, I found the Ark of the Covenant. I found the Cup of Christ. Like, that's pretty crazy, man. Like, I don't know if I believe that if I heard that either.
Right.
And stuff like that. But he does have one student, a young man named Roscoe, who is completely fascinated by Indy's stories and wants Indy to mentor him. Like, he's a little overeager for Indy's taste, but Indy enjoys talking to him. You know, he'll listen about his stories, believes it, and he'll give him tips on, you know, archaeology and doing that. And Roscoe has been wanting Indy to kind of join him in searching for, you know, some sort of lost treasure, like maybe something in Sicily that he's found or things like that. But Indy says, you know, he doesn't do that anymore.
So later that evening, as Indy is closing up the museum, Dr. Voller, horribly scarred and unrecognizable to Indy, walks in. He starts asking Indy about the different artifacts and offers to buy Indy a drink. They talk history, and Indy gets a little too much drink in him, gets a little drunk.
Yeah.
Voller asks him about the Antikythera, and Indy accidentally tells him that he kept that piece hidden away. He's narrowed down where the second piece could be to a couple of locations, but he never got the chance to go look for it, and he invites Voller to see it so they can travel to his collection. Indy shows Voller the piece, and then Voller then speaks in German, and several goons come out. Dun, dun, dun. They're ready to kill Indy when Roscoe comes to the door. He was going to ask Indy for some more questions, but it gives Indy the distraction he needs to knock out one of the goons and make a run for it. Indy and Roscoe escape, and Voller has his dial piece.
Yeah, and so Indy tells Roscoe, hey, we need to get this dial back to stop the Nazis, because that's what Indy does.
He does.
And Roscoe is totally in. This is what he's been wanting all along. And so from there, the story kind of becomes, is more all the fights and the race around the world, like a normal Indiana Jones film. They go to like a couple of these locations that Indy, you know, had figured out that maybe this second piece of dial could be, but it's not there. But the Nazis are kind of following him, and it's this chase of cat and mouse, and Indy's mentoring Roscoe along the way, you know, showing him how to fight and like what to look for in different ruins, things like that, and just kind of grooming him to do things the way he kind of did them and stuff like that. And so after a few tries and a few travels around the world, they finally find the second piece of this dial before the Nazis. However, the Nazis, being very close on their tail, are able to cut off their exit, and they capture Roscoe and force Indy to give up this second piece. And so then Voller takes Indy hostage because he wants to show off, how Indy lost, and that he's going to restore Germany to what it was. And so they board a plane like in Dial of Destiny, but Roscoe hijacks a plane of his own to follow Voller and Indy into this time fissure. And so they go back in time to the time of Archimedes, just like in this one, and Voller ends up dying along with the Nazis, and Indy meets Archimedes again. When Roscoe shows up, and he's like, Indy, we need to go, and Indy tells me he wants to stay, and that there's nothing new for him back home, but this is an adventure that he's wanted to go on his whole life. And so Roscoe reluctantly lets Indy go, and Indy, before Roscoe leaves, gives him his fedora and his whip as a final parting gift and tells him, you've got a lot to learn, but I think you'll do great. And so Roscoe makes it back home, and he becomes the next Indiana Jones.
And we see Indiana Jones and Archimedes right off in the sunset together.
And that's how we would have done Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny.
There you go.
Boom.
Nice.
Yeah, no, I like that pitch quite a bit. I'd love to. I would have loved to make that one. I really want to watch that one.
Yeah.
I got chills kind of talking about it.
Woo. Get a little misty eye.
Maybe it's a little narcissistic, but I don't care. Like I thought it was a pretty fun pitch. So
yeah. Well, hey folks, we had a fun time with you talking about the Indiana Jones movie, The Dial of Destiny. Again, we're not trying to be hypercritical of filmmakers in terms of everybody makes mistakes, and we just look for ways where if there's some problems, how we could fix them, and how we could change them, and then offer you an opportunity to think of a different story idea or a sequel.
Yeah.
If you like this and you're interested in more, watch and listen to our podcasts. It's on YouTube. It's on Instagram.
It's on Spotify.
Oh, sorry.
We're also on Instagram.
Yeah, check us out on Instagram. If you have some ideas of maybe how you would have done a different version of Dial of Destiny, we'd love to hear about it. Get in contact with us. And
absolutely. And if you haven't checked out any of our other episodes, go check those out and like and subscribe them, because that's always a great thing. We release new episodes on Wednesdays, so be on the lookout for that.
Always props to the filmmakers, because they got to make their movie.
Yeah, they got to make their movie. And if you have movies that you want us to go over, let us know on Instagram or in the comments of YouTube. We love to go over movies that you guys want to talk about, not just the ones that we want to talk about. So if there's any movies you want to see or hear repitched, just let us know.
Yeah, and from any time too. So we're not here doing just new movies. We're doing just movies that we feel like could have been have some issues, or maybe that could have been better. So it doesn't need to be like within the last year. It could be movies from any time period, any decade, any year.
Yep.
All right.
All right. Thanks again for watching Pitch Please.
Take care.